Uh, there we go. Okay.
I had, yeah, so I sent you, okay, here
Yeah.
we go. That's
Yeah, there we
interesting.
go.
The host has
Okay.
to approve it now. So, okay, good.
All right. So, Sunday, this is great. I mean, obviously God's in control. Um, you get the floor. What that means in America is this is going to be more about you than Nasser unless he comes in here. Um, so I guess we just want to chat and ask questions. And I'm also going to tell you, I want to be done within an hour. And it might possibly be that I do some things on my other screens if I need to.
Mhm.
Okay. So, Sunday, how would you like to start? What do you want us to talk about?
What do you say?
I said, what would you like us to talk about with you? What areas could you use some advice on, or what would you like to talk about?
Actually, I will like the question I've asked you on Messenger concerning the property that are listed for sale. So I
Yeah.
will, I raised some questions about it. So I will love you to enlighten me and see and let me know your perspective of reason about that. So concerning the project, because like the questions you ask about maybe which one will I prefer between the property or the car, and I thought I'd give you some response to that. So I want you to discuss more about that.
Okay. So let's do this. How about if I say some things and then you correct me if I say something wrong,
All right, all right.
and we'll bring kind of Ben up to speed.
Okay.
So, what you might also do, why don't you post into the dynamic duo those photos? Well, it might be easier if I do it. Okay, so I'm going to get into your thing and we won't post the video. Let me just post some pictures into dynamic duo so he
All
knows
right.
what we're talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I will also give him a rundown of what you've said and then we can talk about it. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and put these. I still have not watched these videos. I'm rather busy, but I'll get to them. All right, dynamic duo. Okay, so it's all there. Okay, so Ben, my understanding is he heard about this property. Somebody has moved out of the area. They're trying to sell this. I think the number he used was like 18,000 in US,
Okay.
excuse me, US dollars. He says there's no taxes in his country for property. So I don't know
Okay.
if there's any kind of a sales tax that's paid or how that works, but he used the number of 18,000. And then the water is a well, so there's no water for utilities.
Okay.
Electricity would be something he would pay for, but he's essentially doing that now, right? So it's
Yeah.
not any significant difference. Eventually, like he's living in a really nice new kind of home that's in a compound with the owner's home, who is not living there year round but comes in and stays. So that's paid to, let's say November or somewhere around there. Um, and probably like you guys, it's an annual payment that they make.
Mm.
Then he has an apartment for his interns, and again, that's paid annually. It's pretty minimal type of apartment. And then he has this upper room for his prayer house that's on top of like a gas station. And that probably comes due in September, October, somewhere around there. So
Sure.
there's lots of overlap. If God gave him the money and he could buy this, it's not like they have to move in right away. but he said it would be minimal work for the apartment, for the interns, and for his family. And then it would take a little bit of money to fix up enough so that his prayer house group, could meet there.
Yeah.
So what he's thinking about, really kind of as an entrepreneur, he's trying to figure out, is this an answer to the prayer? So this is what you could speak to me. So his question was, we were praying for direction in March, and now this is what we're dealing with in April. Is this an answer to the prayer, or is this Satan's distraction?
Sure.
And is it really, I guess I would say, that important compared to other things? And from his side, he sees if God would do this and give him the money, it would not immediately, but when these kinds of rents come due, then he's saving money into the
Sure.
future. And I would just add that we've talked culturally that his culture really elevates the idea of owning property as a church rather than just renting a place.
Okay.
So there's kind of a status in a sense that would be there if God brought this together. And okay, so now Sunday, a question I had this morning is tell us where this is located in terms of where you live and where the prayer house is. Is this within walking range? Would we consider this to be in your ministry circle?
Actually, the property located 2 or 3 minutes distance to where I sell gas,
Okay.
and to where I'm still we are living now, my apartment. Let me say like 5 to 7 minutes distance, walking
Okay.
Is this
distance. Yeah.
walking? Are we talking walking? Okay.
Yes.
Walking distance. Yeah. Okay. So,
Five to
Brad, do you
seven
mind? Oh,
apartments.
sorry, Sunday. Go ahead and say that again. I didn't hear you.
I said property located uh 2 to 3 minutes distance to where I sell gas presently.
Okay, good. Okay, I got it. Yeah.
And to my apartment is just like 5 to 7 minutes distance.
Okay. Okay.
So Sunday, what about visibility? Like where the prayer house is a main road, people see it. Is this hidden somewhere or is this a visible type of property?
Actually, where we are using presently for prayer house is beside the road. So, and that place is visible to everyone passing along the highway. But these are property located in the inside the streets, not in
Hmm.
the main road.
Okay.
Inside the streets, yeah.
Okay.
Though if we are to talk about uh, if we are targeting the customers or people around the community, so the property located in a good place. But if we are considering maybe people from a far distance, is not in a location where it is easy for them to locate.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll let Ben ask questions, but Sunday, you have a very good entrepreneurial mind. So you've made good decisions, you think well, you think like a business owner. Obviously, you are a business owner. Your dad was as well. So do you think this is a good location?
Uh, for the gas,
Uh, we have you frozen. And Ben, I'm assuming you're still with me.
Yeah. There he is. Yeah.
okay, it's just the same as the place we are using to sell gas now,
Hmm.
no difference. But in terms of church, for the community, it is a good location. Like I said earlier, because where we have presently is beside the main road. But this place is not beside the main road. It's just beside the street road. Are you getting the point
I
now?
think we understand.
But for
Yeah, so let me say it back to you. Unlike the prayer house, which is an industrial building on a highway, and it's a
yeah,
gas station, is what we would
yeah,
call it in America. This is actually more like in a neighborhood. And so I would assume if God gave you the money and you had this property, it would be maybe more rare that now you have a church in this particular neighborhood and people might view it as, in a sense, their church. And they might think, like, why would we go to someone else's neighborhood to go to church when we could just go to
yeah.
this church? Is that what we're thinking?
You get
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now the question is it big enough? Let's say it this way. Is it big enough to have 100 people in a room?
What I was thinking is, if God gave us the property, so what we are going to do is that, with the number we have in prayer house now, we can be using the sitting room, the sitting room of that building. But that is why I told you that we may need some money to arrange for church. So inside the garden, we can have a temporary structure where we can be using as church. So outside the building, inside the compound, if you watch the video, you will see a large space in front of the house, which is fenced. So we can be using that space to have our temporary building, not a proper building. The one where we can just get some pole and canopy to just form it and have the roof, so we can be using that. But presently, if we get it now, so if our money lapse in where we are using presently, so I mean prayer house, we can still be using the sitting room for our worship, pending the time we will have our temporary uh, uh, building.
Sure.
But everything will be inside the same compound.
So,
So including the intern and okay.
okay, so how much land is there? Can you build another building in the future, or are you landlocked with what you have?
Actually, the building inside the compound, it is a single wall, but where they have 4 bedroom inside that compound, and they have 2 bedroom, and they also have a room and parlor self-con inside the same compound, and there is space at the back of the building to use as a mini garden. So, and at the front, there's a place enough to have a church,
Okay, but Sunday, the
and
total the
the,
total
the
amount of
space
land,
is more than 100.
what did you say?
The space in front of the building, if
Uh-huh.
we have our if we have our temporary church, so the space can contain more than 100.
Okay. So Sunday, the total amount of land is how many hectares? How big is the
Uh,
total amount of land?
okay. Uh, though we used to plot here, so the land is 2 plots of land.
Okay.
So let me try to, but it's not up to acre.
It is not an acre.
It's not up to that.
Okay.
Maybe going to have I think, no. Okay. I'm trying to browse that if I can see the actual, because I want to see you give you the correct figure of the acre the land will be. Sorry. Oh, are you checking it there?
So this is kind of a dumb American question, but is this a safe neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay.
And
I'm watching your video.
All right.
Sunday. Oh, go
Yes,
ahead.
sir.
If you know the amount of acres it is, and the reason we're wondering is because will there be potential in the future to build a church there, to build more buildings there, is what we're trying to figure out. That's
Actually, in the future, even though if we have it, there are some places we can convert, like where I mentioned room and parlor cell, we can convert that one
mhm.
into church building.
Okay.
So we can do a conversion, and it will not affect the main building for to use as an apartment.
Okay. 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 Well, if you find that amount of acres later, you can let us know on the group. Um,
All right.
so Brad, do you have any other questions?
Well, he said, Ben said Hector, however you say it. We're talking acres,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I wonder if it's plots. So when you said you bought or they gave you 20 plots, do you use the same terminology for this land, or was that a terminology that was used for that open land?
I'm
We're
trying to
not
check
hearing you.
the.
There we go.
I can't hear your question.
Well, the question was if we were using the same terminology as your other property, and your other property was 20 plots, which then
Yeah.
equaled 2.3 acres. So
Yes.
is this defined by plots or is it defined in some other way?
No, it's defined by plots.
Okay, so how many
Plots.
plots is it? How many plots?
Two.
Two plots.
Plots, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So I wrote down two blocks, but that's not right. Two plots.
Two plots.
So it's really a tenth of the size of the other property.
What is it?
It's 1/10 the size of your other property. Your other property is 20 plots. This is two plots.
Yes.
Okay. So if that's how it's defined, then we're saying the acreage is like 0.23 acres. I mean, just to help us understand it. That's what a plot would be.
Okay.
I'm trying to ask Chat GPT if you will give me the right answer.
Yeah. Gotcha. Keep doing that Sunday. That seems accurate though, Brad. Because I did see that I said hectares, but I
Yeah.
did since then I looked online to see if they use hectares in Nigeria, and no, they don't. They use acres, which is
Okay.
um yeah. I just always assume the rest of the world uses hectares,
Yeah.
because that's based on the
Yeah.
metric system, but not Nigeria.
So Sunday, what Ben and I talked about yesterday, and I like this idea. I do not know if we're going to get any money for anything. Okay, so if God gives us money, that's what He's able to do. But I'm kind of thinking that what I might be talking about is $30,000 as a maximum amount, and then you use it however you want. Okay, so instead of saying, "Oh, you got to buy a car," I'm thinking if we were to give, if God gave you $30,000 and it all worked out, which we don't even know how we would get the money there, right? So that's a big deal. If we get somebody who wants to give you the money, you're going to have to do some work on your side to figure out what's the best way to receive that kind of money. But if you receive 30,000, then I'm thinking you have the money to do this, you have the money to perhaps do some minimal repairs or cleanup or whatever needs to happen. And then you're back to your original idea that maybe you could buy a used vehicle that will help you solve your car problem. But I would say if I'm dealing with someone who is not really looking for their name to be on something, like there's a lot of giving that happens where the donor wants to be recognized, right? So then,
Yeah.
their name would be on the property in some way. I don't have somebody like that, but if we could mentally think that what we're really doing is perhaps buying this property in honor of someone who has died, and then we're giving you enough other money that you can do a whole bunch of other stuff, whatever that would be. And then you have to decide whether you have enough money to have a car and what kind of car that is. And where I said to you before, we don't want to buy a car in memory of somebody and have it break down, every week, and now it costs us more money. But
Sure.
I think what we could do is see this property as really a major legacy of the donor recognizing her husband. And then you got plenty of cash to do some repairs or fix it up or buy that canopy or
Yeah.
whatever you want to do. And then perhaps there's money that you could buy a used car. So does that sound doable to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think
Okay, so
the acre is maybe, but I'm not sure. Maybe 0.33 acre.
yeah,
0.33.
0.3. Okay. Similar to what
okay.
you found, Brad.
Yeah, okay.
I
Okay,
don't know, maybe
so
that is
Ben, it's an unusual situation for you because it's not like we're trying to get 100 people to give money for this
Sure.
project, right?
Sure.
Instead, we're dealing with perhaps the opportunity that someone may be led to generously solve the problem the way I just described it.
Yeah.
But and so then, you come into play by telling us it would really be better if you had 100 people or 50 people or 20 people or 10 people or whatever instead of
Sure.
one. And there's lots of opportunities to try to develop that, in other ways. But what are your thoughts on this project? So as you're hearing all of this, and of course we're not there, we don't see it, but
Hmm.
what do you think about as you're hearing this?
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to these types of things, I like to look at, what are you spending currently on rent? And I have these numbers from what we talked about already, Brad. He's spending $500 a year on these rents. And so this property would eliminate those essentially and at a cost of $18,000, which is, I think, 36 times 500, which that's normally when you're talking a buy versus a rent, those numbers work. It
Okay.
would save you money. You'd be able to use that money on other things in ministry. In looking over those things, I would want to be very clear that the maintenance cost needs to be considered as
Right.
well as the repair cost. Most of those roofs, the roofs that I looked at on those pictures and videos, they were pretty rusted. And so that's something that you need to consider as well, Sunday. You need to think to yourself, how much is it going to cost up front? And this could be part of that $30,000 to get this to where it's maintenance free. And, there's no such thing as permanent maintenance free, but you can put some money in at the beginning to make sure that it doesn't have those problems. Medium term, long term, of course, there's going to be maintenance, but short term and medium term, we want to eliminate problems because that's just less stress that you're going to have to deal with when it comes to fundraising, less stress that you're going to have to deal with when it comes to where is that money going to come from the family money, from fundraising, those types of things. So I do want you to spend some time thinking about, just come up with, if this property, if you could fix everything on this property, how much would that cost? And then that's going to be added, of course, to the upfront cost. So, maybe it's put in 5,000 and everything's pristine. I don't know. That's what I would encourage you to do with this property. Okay, so that's number one. Is, it does seem like a good investment based on what you have um, currently, your current payments per year on your rentals for your interns and for the prayer house. It seems like a good investment for that. But I do want to encourage you with that. Um, what is it going to cost extra? What's the maintenance going to look like? Okay, so that's one. The second thing is the car. So picking, what does God want you to do with money? Because, that's going to happen. You're going to get one-time gifts. It's like you could do this or you could do that. So really that's where I guess your, I don't know, return on investment in ministry. I don't know if there's a term for that. Maybe there is. Maybe I just don't know it. But that's where we're going to have to figure out which one of these things, whether it be a car or um, the property, maybe $30,000 doesn't come in. Maybe it's enough. Maybe you only have enough for one or the other. So that's where you're going to have to, of course, take it to the Lord, pray about it, um, talk to the wise people around you, your board of directors. Brad and I will also be praying alongside you in that. But which one of those is going to benefit the ministry the most is the question that I have. Do you have any sense of that right now? If you had to pick between those two Sunday, do you have any sense as to which one would benefit the ministry more, the car or the property? Oh, you're still muted. You're still muted. We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Sunday. Okay.
Actually, if I should be sincere, I will I will say the property will benefit the ministry than the car.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The reason why is that the property, if God give us the property, we will not need to pay for any rent again, including the gas shop. We will not be paying for rent yearly again, and we will not be paying for rent of where we are living
Mm-hmm.
right now, our
Mm-hmm.
apartment, and the
Yeah.
church rent will not be there again. So
Mm-hmm.
and even though uh, it will be easy for us because since everything is in the same compound, both
Mm-hmm.
the church, our apartments, and the interns and actually we are still paying for the rent for the interns
Okay.
where they stay. So all the four aspects of rent that will be close because we have it and it is our home.
Mm. Sure.
So I think the car will also benefit us and it will also help ministry to move forward. The reality is that the benefit of the property is more than car, if we are to be sincere to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because car is not what we are using every day.
Okay.
So, but the property is what we are using every day
Sure.
because we are sleeping, and so I think the car is more uh, benefiting the ministry than the car.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
hope this true.
Sure. Okay, I seem to, that makes sense. That's what I would have thought, but of course, this is your ministry and you're the one doing it on a day-to-day basis. So I did want to ask that question of you. Still, um, a matter of prayer, of course, we want to know what God has to say because God could have something completely different, completely new in all these areas. And so I just wanted to, I guess, bring that up. It's like a lot of times we do have that And even unbelievers, not unbelievers, I'm sorry, retract that statement. Even people that are in full-time ministry have that question when they get money, they get bonuses. It's like, what are they going to spend their money on? It could be this or that. And so, a lot of times with ministry, however, we do have those questions come up because we do, even us, when we have our monthly support, but also one-time gifts come in, especially, or not especially, but around holiday times, we get a lot of one-time gifts. It's like, what are we going to spend those on? We have the same questions. So, that's just what I wanted to bring up to you is like, okay, let's take it to the Lord. Which benefits the ministry more because this isn't the only time this is going to happen. At some other time in the course of your ministry Sunday, you're going to get one-time gifts. Um, so yeah, Brad, did you have anything else on any of that?
Well, yeah, I just had this thought Sunday that when you were in the car accident, so Ben, I think you were on the prayer page to know that there was an accident in the last 30 days or so.
Mm,
So when you have a car, unlike this property, there's many more things that could go wrong that you're responsible for, whether it's maintenance or what would have happened if that had been your car that you own.
mm,
So I'm kind of thinking when Ben does the calculation and says it makes sense economically to spend 18,000 so that you can save this rent money, and it's also wise to say what else is it going to cost? I'm kind of thinking at this stage of your ministry, maybe not having a car is a good way to minimize the risk
sure.
of
Yeah.
additional money that might be needed if you had a car and something went wrong, right? So you're smart enough to know all of that, but it God did give you a great example in the last 60 days that if that had been your car, it would have been a major problem. And then picture this, if
Mm,
people sacrificed to give you a car and now it's wrecked. Obviously, God's in control and he knows all of that. But
sure.
it's a lot different in buying this property. And then if you're not prioritizing a car, but you had the money, cash flow to go for the next year or whatever with renting vehicles and having other people carry that risk. I think Ben's right. The more money that you could put into this property to really present it
Yeah.
well would be really important. And so I said one time in my book that one of the principles I was taught was that quality produces quantity. And
Mm,
I think that's true in your culture as well as our culture.
sure.
So the more that you could take this property and give it the appearance of quality, the more attractive it is for people to go there.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
Ben, you test that out. Would you say that principle is true in Latin America?
Yeah, definitely. So with my personal experience, what it's been is when you go the cheap way and you buy the cheapest materials, you're ending up, spending a lot of labor and money repairing those things, short term, medium term. And so that's why I wanted to, when I mentioned, the rusty roofs, I said, short term to medium term, you should be good. And it's, of course, you're never going to get away from maintenance long term. But yeah, Brad, that definitely does resonate with me. And something I thought of when you were saying that too, Sunday, is, maybe you would consider what it could look like, what kind of monthly support you would need in order to maintain a car, in order to set aside money for those minor accidents or not minor accidents. And so you could say to yourself, you could, and test this, go before the Lord with it, of course, go before your board and say, hey, I would like to buy a car. What do we think? What do I think? What is God telling me? I need monthly support in order to have that car. And then when you hit those numbers, when you build the monthly support, then you can say, okay, now I feel comfortable having a car. I don't know if that's something that you think you're in agreement with, Brad, but I really think that if you picked out, maybe it's if you were getting commitment for $300 a month monthly support, then yes, it's time to pull the trigger on fundraising for a car. But without cars, man, cars break down a lot. You get in the minor accidents. They need monthly maintenance so that they don't have major breakdowns. And so, I would say that thinking about it again, I would say that you would need to make that commitment that I will raise money for a car once I have a certain amount of monthly support dedicated to that. So I don't know what you think about that, Sunday, but that's the advice that I would give you.
I'm going to add something to that. So I put this on Nasser's prayer page, not in this specific context here, but I think it was December. I was meeting with a friend of mine that is using his business to fund third world ministries that he's been associated with. And he
Mm.
was telling me about a Filipino church that wanted to buy their pastor a car. And this was someone he knows. So he has done international travel, and now he's supporting people that he had met through his travels. And he was very pleased that he was able to talk the pastor out
Mm.
of refusing that. Because he
Oh,
said
see.
it's going to cost so much money to maintain, and then it breaks down and all this kind of stuff. He said, you don't need that in your life. It's nice that they want to do that for you,
Mm.
but, and it was like $5,000 or some amount. I mean, it wasn't like a new car, but he just said in his experience, he hates the idea of these ministries buying cars because there's
Sure.
so much more involved in the cost of a car.
Mm.
And, comparing that to this building, at least in
Yeah.
America, we would say, wow, that's a good investment. It's much more likely that it's much more likely you're not going to have a tornado and blow it away. I mean, that's what we deal with in the Midwest, right? But anyway, I'm not discouraging you. I just, want to throw all of that in. And then you also have to understand your whole life as we described it is one miracle after another.
Sure.
And I think it's going to have to be really careful that if God gives you this, we would step back and say, how is that even possible that 2 years ago or 3 years ago, this wasn't even on the radar screen of what you would be praying about. Okay, so now to
Sure.
balance that, you have to be careful that you don't move so far ahead of what God is wanting to do that now you've obligated people and God to do your dream instead of waiting for God's dream.
Hmm.
So, and I'm going to put it in this context because this is how I thought a lot. For part of my life, I was involved in thinking through planting churches.
Mm.
And some churches get started and they have an overemphasis of missions and giving money away, and that actually prevents them from growing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so if we think about it like a business, if we're starting a business, we can either dilute our capital and have multiple projects and we never get anywhere, or
Hmm.
we concentrate our capital on what we're trying to do and what we do best. And then if we can grow that into a business, now we can branch out and start doing other things. So
Hmm.
there's actually a church strategy that on one side of the equation are people that feel like as a church, they have to tithe 10% to other people. And, maybe they have missions, as a focus. And from the very beginning, they have all this, I'm just going to say, distraction
Hmm.
of what they're trying to do. And then they never really succeed because their interest has not been focused. Okay. So the other side of it is you start a church and you think, if we could just concentrate for the next 5 years on what we're doing, we will get to the place, hopefully, where then we can start to branch out. So when Jesus said, Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria. Well, one option would be to try to go to all those places all at once. Another
Mm,
option is to realize when we develop Jerusalem, eventually we have to go somewhere else. And obviously, we know from Acts, the Holy Spirit stepped in and made them go somewhere else, right?
mm. Yeah, yeah.
So when they didn't follow the timing of really what God wanted, in a sense, it happened anyway. But I really respect and appreciate that from your very beginning, you've always been focused on helping, the poor and the needy and the widows, and all that stuff is very, very good. But I'm just applying it to this situation that if you get $30,000, you need to focus like a laser beam kind of, and how can we use that money to really build the prayer house? And would having a car dilute that focus in a sense of what could happen? And it's
Yeah.
more than just fixing this place up. So if you had the money that you could start, like you would have a sign. Okay, how much does that cost? That costs something. Okay. So then would you have some printed material that you could be handing out? Would there be some marketing budget that you could go door to door in this community and let everybody know what's happening? Everything you do costs money. So could you pay to be on the radio? You need to start evaluating, would marketing be
Mm,
more productive than owning a car? And I think that's probably what we're trying to say in all of this is we have to trust you to make those decisions. But as a young person who has so many blessings, you also need to step back and say, I can dream of all kinds of things. Like if I'm you, I could say, I could dream of 100 things I could do with money. But that's
mm,
not going to help you succeed. You need to think of one thing that you can do and make sure you do that well. And
mm.
then hopefully God helps you to grow that so that then you can do other things. Okay, so I know I'm talking too much, but this helps. Here's a story. I heard the guy who started Tom's Shoes. So
Mm.
I don't expect Sunday to know this, but do you recognize the name Tom's Shoes, Ben?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Okay, so Tom's Shoes is a deal Sunday where this guy, he was the first one probably to think of this. Now there's gobs of companies like this. He makes shoes, and for every shoe he sells, he gives a shoe away to a third world country. And that's been his business model. And the guy made money in other businesses. He's a young guy now, he's probably older. But when I heard him speak the first time, he was probably still early 30s, maybe late 20s. And he had made some money in technology businesses. Then he started Tom Shoes. And he was speaking at a conference where he said, I've been criticized by why didn't I just give this money away? When I
Mm,
made all this money in my other business, why didn't I just give more of it away? And he said to us, it was a leadership conference. He said, I've done the math. If I would have given my money away as a charitable gift, I could have given away so many shoes. But he said, I now have a very productive business that is giving away this number of shoes
mm.
every
Yeah,
year. And it's
yeah,
much, much more sustainable and much bigger than what would have happened if he had just given it away.
sure.
And so that's what we're kind of talking about. In fact, Ben really has this passion when he wrote that material for Global Impact Team. We want to do things that are helping you to create sustainability
Mm,
than just have a flash in the pan. That would be our culture saying you could have a big splash, but then it goes away. So
mm.
if God gave you 30,000, how could you use that in a way that creates a sustainable ministry instead of being able to do lots of things, but it's really not helping you grow the ministry. Okay, you
Yeah,
get the idea. Yeah.
Brad, let me just jump in there too with that Tom's analogy. That's perfect in that it wasn't just Tom giving, it was also thousands and thousands of people buying shoes, and they were giving, they were involved in the ministry.
Exactly.
And that's where
And
my point is with, building monthly support, getting more people involved with the ministry. Because, you can have those one-time gifts, those home runs. They're awesome. But also the day-to-day people that are donating on a monthly basis, Sunday is what I've been, I always pound home with people that I coach in fundraising. It's, are you doing your little things well? And that's one of them is just cultivating those relationships to where you have monthly support.
awesome.
So, Brad, do you want to Sunday is do you want to say anything about any of that stuff? I want to just kind of talk about what we talked about last time I was here. If you wouldn't mind doing that at some point. But do you have anything to say about what we've said at all so far, Sunday?
Actually, I really get the point, and I will work on them. And it is a good advice. So I will work on them. Though, like the story that brother just mentioned now about the company who produce a shoe. I think
Hmm.
you have shared the story with me, if you remember. So, and I've learned a lot from that story because if I have one, just a single thing, and I dash it out, how will I use that single thing to multiply and be able to give more? So, but if I use the only one that I have, if I use it wisely,
Hmm.
and yeah, I multiply it into two, two plus two, three plus three, and I'll be able to give more than one in the future. So, and I also learn to be focused on what is much important. So,
Hmm.
thank you so much. I really appreciate the advices.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, Ben, you got 20 minutes or whatever, but I'm going to shut down my part in at 9:30. So you
Okay.
wanted to kind of bridge and to talk about what we talked about last time. So what are the big, let's do it this way. Ben will relate to this. So there's a guy who talks about ordering your life to where you put the big rocks first. Okay, so if we have a container and we have sand and we have rocks. We put the rocks in first and then we put the sand on top of it. And that's how you get everything in. If
Hmm.
you put the sand in first, you're not going to get all the rocks in your container. Okay,
Hmm.
so I think what Ben wants to talk about are what are the essential rocks that we have to prioritize in a ministry, and then
Hmm.
that's what we're kind of focusing on as we build this kind of like foundation. Let's
Hmm.
get all of those rocks in place. And then we start doing other things that are kind of like smaller, not maybe as important, and they all work out to where they fit around those rocks. Okay, so now Ben, use that analogy to take us with what we talked about last time and what we
Sure.
need to think about this time.
Sure, sure. So, in fundraising, partnership development is another way to call it. Your biggest rock is your relationships. So Sunday, I think last time we talked, I had challenged you to consider um, having some kind of newsletter that you send out, an email newsletter to people that are interested in your ministry. And so that would be everyone in the prayer house group, everyone that you've connected with, even people in your home country who are involved in prayer and who would consider being involved in other ways if they knew about needs. Is that something that you were able to do? Have you compiled a list of the people that you would like to have on that prayer list?
Actually, most of people here, uh, they are not used to email.
Hmm.
Many people use to Facebook. So
Okay.
Facebook and WhatsApp. So that's
Okay.
what
Okay.
many people are used to.
Okay. Well, um, to when you're thinking about growing that, getting that bigger, especially with churches and individuals in the States, you need to do the email as well. And so what could that look like? MailChimp's a good option to compile that's what we use. to compile a list of the people's email addresses, and then go into that those groups that you're involved with WhatsApp, some kind of message like, hey, I'm starting a monthly email with my updates. Would you like to be involved? Please give me your email addresses so I can add them to the group, or to the email, and then build it that way. I can't stress enough how important that is. You get some social media to me, social media, I think I used this last time, is like the cherry on top of the icing. The cake itself is in those relationships. And then, so that's your first big rock. And so maybe the biggest rock in there. So all these other things around the rock, to go back from the cake analogy to the rock analogy, all those things around the rock, the sand, the water, the smaller rocks, those types of things, they're really going to fit in after the making people feel like they're involved. And so I'm not
Yes.
100% sure on this, but a good open rate for an email that you send out would be 40% engagement. Okay. Facebook posts are like, I don't remember last time I read, but it was like 1 to 2%. So you're talking 20 times or 40 times the level of engagement that you're currently getting. What would that mean to your ministry? I don't know. But to find out, I'm really going to stress that you do that. Um, you my email address, I'll send it to you right after this. I want it to be the first one, and I want to see those updates every month, my friend. I want to see them every month. Um, because that's what really starts to build those relationships and really starts to get people to understand how they are involved with your ministry, whether it be financially or in prayer. And so we can talk about that. Do you have any questions about that portion of the advice that I'm giving you right now? The homework I'm giving you? Sunday, do you have any questions about that at all?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
Sunday, I want to say
Yeah.
something. So let's say you have WhatsApp and you have, we'll just say 20 people on that, and they're all in the prayer house. Okay. How many of those people use email?
Actually, most of people on WhatsApp in our prayer house, some I almost all of them have email, but they are not used to it.
Okay. Okay. So here's what's important for you to know. In
What is it?
America, here's what you need to know. In America, if there's 20 people on your prayer page, no one uses WhatsApp. Okay. I only have WhatsApp because Wilson wants me to have it. And I don't pay attention to it all the time.
Hmm.
Okay. So when Ben says you need an email list, what you need to understand is that's how you communicate to people in America. Okay. And it's probably true, like one of the prayer partners is my aunt in Australia. She's not using WhatsApp. So Facebook in America is dying.
Hmm.
Okay, so it may be important in your culture, and it's like, oh, this is cool, and everyone's kind of like into Facebook. That's not what's happening in America. People have moved away from Facebook, particularly older people, and they're looking for, like in what used to be Twitter. They're on X or something. But even in X, there's not a lot of exchange that would take place in the same way that WhatsApp would. Okay, so all I'm
Hmm.
saying is the light bulb's kind of coming on for me that you may not be seeing the significance of the email because your people and your culture don't use it.
Hmm.
But the things that are important to you and your culture, we don't use. I would just as soon delete WhatsApp. Okay. I don't need another means of communication. My wife wants me to take Messenger off my phone. She doesn't like the fact that I still use Messenger. She hates it. Okay. Well, I, I actually use it a lot because it's easier for me to stay on Facebook and deal with somebody on Messenger than it is to get off of Facebook and go into WhatsApp. Okay. So you get the idea. So I think what this is really about is not getting your Nigerians to use email, but recognizing that Americans need email if you want their attention.
I'll work on that,
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
and I will post that on our prayer group to ask for people's email address where I
Sure.
can be dropping the email later.
Yeah.
Sunday,
Yes.
I'll send you the link to the
Mail.
MailChimp, which is the email. It's basically you can customize your emails, your monthly, communications, and then you can just add all the people to it. And then when you put that out, you put that out to all your people at once. So you don't have to do the custom emails. It's a good way to save time um, for you. So that's one, which is the email list. Okay. The second thing that I'm going to ask you, were you able to read the book or at least start some type of fundraising book or material? The God Ask is what I said was a one that's available and an easy read, but there's other ones too. Were you able to do any of that?
I was able to read. You mean the book you sent to us then?
Is that is that the one that we talked
I,
about, Brad?
which book are you
Um,
talking about?
yeah, I would have I don't know that I would have had a whole lot of content, but Sunday is talking about I did post a couple chapters
Okay.
and it was the initial kind of thing. Okay, so now Ben, on that topic, I've been doing a lot of AI where I
Oh,
ask summarize the book, what are the top 10 lessons from the book or whatever we would
oh,
say.
cool. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, for people who don't have the money, he doesn't have the money to go buy the book.
Okay.
Okay. And
Yeah.
and the whole book is not a free PDF.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So have you used AI to kind of summarize things like that?
I've heard of it. I haven't personally myself, but I've actually there's a podcast I listen to that does that every day. He has one book summarized
Yeah.
and it's like a 6 minute presentation. It's kind of a cool thing.
Okay. And
So
the
so
other
Brad,
thing,
you're
Ben, maybe
saying that
you what you could speak to is just going on the website that you've given me has lots of content that's free. It may not be the total
mm,
book, but both of these guys, Nasser then, could spend a lot of time on that website just drilling down. So does that accomplish what you're
yeah,
looking for as
that,
well?
yeah. So really Sunday, what it one of the keys to fundraising is just it's that you're constantly doing it. That's why I also called it partnership development because the people that have given, it's continuing the relationship with them. The people that will give, it's starting and continuing the relationship with. And so I will send. Did you send them the link to that? I'll put it on the Dynamic Duo page as well. But it has all the free resources that Sunday, the free resources that you can do. It can be just little videos that get you pumped up about fundraising because fundraising's not, generally speaking, it's not the favorite part of the people that are in missions. You want to be out in the field. You want to be doing your calling. You want to be doing the work that you feel like God's called you for. But fundraising is part of that. And so a lot of times you need, people who are on the field need to be encouraged to continue to do that. You get those big one-time gifts, those home runs, but at the same time, you also need to be thinking about what monthly support would be able to do for your family, for your ministry, for all those things. And so I'm just constantly going to be beating the war drum for that. And so I will put that resource in the group as well. But I would hope that until we meet again, you and me, you'll meet with Brad. I want to come onto these calls every quarter or so, every few months to just kind of check in. I'd hope that this month, next month, the following month, you would look into those resources that I send. And like I said, I want to see that I'll give you my email address and I want to see that those monthly emails come out. You put me on your list and I want to and then I'll give you, if you don't mind, I'll give you feedback on, you know, maybe you could talk more about your family. Maybe you could talk more about this on your emails. I want to see what you produce and then I'll give you feedback on it.
And Sunday, Ben and I
Okay.
were talking
So
about this.
so yeah,
Go ahead.
no, 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 I wasn't gonna say anything. I don't remember what I was gonna say, but go ahead, Brad.
Ben and I were talking yesterday, kind of by mistake, but it was really a God thing. Um, he was just telling me of other people he works with where he's had to tell them every time they do their monthly email, don't ask for money. Okay, so that's not what this is
Yeah,
about. What Ben is trying to say is you're using that monthly contact to help prayer partners know you better, know your family, pray better. If we could say it that way, more informed.
mhm.
And
Sure,
if
sure.
every now and then you ask for money, that's great. But if you're asking for money every time they open an email, they're not going to be opening emails, right? So,
Yeah.
so this is really developing relationships and trying to enhance that. And I'm thinking if I were in your shoes, I would find a way to just cut and paste whatever, is appropriate from the
Hmm.
email blast to put into WhatsApp. So you need to communicate with your culture the way that they want to be, informed. And we're just trying to tell you if I lived in Nigeria, I'd be pretty excited about Facebook, but when I'm living in America, I would just as soon never see it again. And really the
Sure.
only reason why I'm there is because of you and Nasser. Okay, so, unfortunately, that gets me deeper and deeper into it, but I think it's the right tool for what we're trying to do. But I think that email idea is trying to reach people with what they really want to see and not like, let's say Sherry. Okay, so I add Sherry to all this stuff. I don't expect her to actually be in Messenger reading things. It's not going to
Hmm.
happen.
Sure.
My brother would never do it. Okay. An email allows you to be very precise, and everything you want to say is said on one page. When we
Sure.
communicate in Messenger, we're communicating today in an hour and a half, and we could have read it in 10 minutes if it was an email. I mean, that's kind of how it works, right? So, so if we're appealing to the donors, I can see where Ben is saying the email is the format that really
Hmm.
helps people to, maximize their time, read what you want to say, and be done with it. And they want to read it in 10 minutes and be done.
Yeah. So I will echo that, Sunday. And I know I mentioned this last time we talked. Um, be very careful in your email updates how often you ask for money because, there's a lot of people get into that mentality where it's like every month there's an emergency. Every month they need money for something. Don't fall into that trap because like Brad said, people, they're gonna it's just gonna be another ask. And if God has a project and you want to mention that and you feel like God's really leading you to talk about that project, do it, but do it sparingly. Maybe once or twice a year you can have those types of projects in your email. But the point of the email is to have people feel like they're connected with your ministry and also to, God willing, people will respond. You can say something like, "Hey, and how can we be praying for you? How can we be involved with your life?" Because it can't just be, or it shouldn't just be where people are donors are just sending money and sending money. It has to be a relationship. You know, you should know what's going on in their lives. You should know what's going on in their families, in their jobs, the big changes that are happening with them. Um, and that's where the relationships really start to develop. Especially at first, when money's not involved. You want to be involved with people's lives. You want to let them know that you care about them and you want them to care about their ministry. Anything related to finance will be a natural outgrowth of that relationship. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, I'm just looking, we're about out of time, Brad. I will send any I saw you sent some more messages to that group, Brad. Anything that you didn't send to the group, I will. Okay.
Very good, guys. Hey, Sunday, how about if you close us in prayer?
Okay. I'll pray. Father, we thank you for how you have guided us throughout this discussion. Thank you for the wisdom that you have released. Thank you for the knowledge. Thank you for our life. Thank you for how you are directing us. Thank you for how you are open my understanding through my mentors to know that it is also important to be sharing out email updates to our ministry partners for people to know more and believe that you, God, will use that to transform the ministry for good. Thank you for your faithfulness over our lives. Lord, we pray that everything that we have discussed today, let us see the outcome for good. Help me also to work on them accurately in a way that will give glory to your name. Let your will be done, O Lord, as we are approaching this weekend. Lord, we pray that you, God, go with us and protect us. No evil will fall upon us in the name of Jesus. Father, let your will be done in our lives. Let our will be done in our ministries. Let your will be done over every prayer partners. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Awesome, Ben. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your time, Sunday. You guys have a good day.
You too. Thank you guys. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.